Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast. I'm Fran Duffy, and we've got an awesome show here for you today because we're going to put a ribbon on our process series where we've talked with evaluators all across the media, all across the NFL, in projecting players from college to the NFL. So why not talk with a former NFL general manager? Let's talk with Scot McCloughan, a two-time GM, was last with the Washington Redskins a few years back, but was previously with the San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, and also he really cut his teeth in Green Bay under the legendary Ron Wolf there with the Packers, worked with a number of future NFL GMs and NFL head coaches as well up there in Green Bay. So a really fun conversation, really got into the weeds here with Scot, not just on player evaluation with what he sees on film, but also from the character standpoint. And you guys know, longtime listeners know how much I value and understand the importance of that aspect of the evaluation. So we really get into it deep there with Scot. Really fun conversation. I hope you guys enjoy that. But that's not all we've got here for today's show, because this week we've got the supplemental draft and a couple of players that a lot of people are talking about. The safety from Washington State, Jalen Thompson, the wide receiver from West Virginia, Marcus Sims. Both of them are leaving their college programs. They're entering the NFL this year, so the supplemental draft will be held later this week. We'll see if they end up with a future NFL team, but we're going to talk about what those two guys did on film last season. I'll share my thoughts there on both of those players, and then we're going to wrap it up with a question from you at home. But let's get things started. Mr. Relevant with Scot McCloughan.
It's time for Mr. Relevant.
Well, like I said earlier, really excited to welcome in a longtime NFL executive, a scout to his core, and that's former NFL general manager Scot McCloughan. Scot, welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast, the first-time guest here on the show. And we really want to talk to you about your evaluation process, your background, and just your overall evaluation philosophy while you're projecting college players to the NFL. And I guess let's start there first. When you get into the evaluation process, you're sitting down, you want to watch a guy for the very first time, which is happening all around the country right now. What goes into that? How do you decide which games you want to watch on the first watch? How do you go? What's your mindset going into an evaluation the first time you watch a guy?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Of course, you get all the media stuff and saying that, this top 10 pick, top 20 pick, third round pick, whatever. I don't care about it. When I was general manager with the Niners and, of course, with the Redskins, you have National Football Scouting, which is NFS, and you got Blesto that do all the juniors, and give them grades and all that. I would never give the grades to the scouts. I said, you just go in, eyes wide open, and just, build it. And the thing that's good about it is, in my personal opinion, the way you do it right with an organization is you leave a scout in the same area year in and year out, because they know the freshmen that can play. That's when I first saw Frank Gore as a true freshman. And I was like, wow, he had Clinton Portis, in front of him. I mean, but just that stuff helps out from the standpoint of building a portfolio, which I call it. And, it's unique because, usually every year you get one or two more scouts that are different than ones you've had. They move up and go in that organization, get a vertical move or whatever. But it's a long process. It's a very long process, but it's still football, and it's not hard to identify the talent. It's hard to identify the person.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to get down to. I've had really good picks and I've had bad picks, and majority of the time I missed on the bad picks was the it factor is meaning what kind of person are they? Can you go from being average to good? Can you go from being good to great? And the ones that do that have the it factor, and they're all ball. And I hate to keep saying it, but Frank Gore's a perfect example. He's a third-round pick my first year in San Fran, and I took Alex Smith, number 1 overall, and he's a bust and all that. Not, but they stay in there and fight. They stay in there and compete, and but it's the it thing. It's what's inside their heart, what's inside their mind, what kind of football player they want to be, and understand the passion they have for the game.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it that I find to be so fascinating, and it's really interesting timing too, because this week Chris Ballard, the general manager for the Indianapolis Colts, wrote an article for NBC Sports for Peter King. He wrote his MMQB article, and he cited a quote from Jerry Angelo where he said, the character set the floor and the talent set the ceiling. And then I always reflect on a quote that I know has been attributed to Bill Belichick. I'm not sure where he had gotten it from, but he actually has it flipped, where the character sets the ceiling and the talent sets the floor. And I find it interesting because I think you can make an argument on both sides, and I guess it's really kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But it's just interesting when you factor that whole part of it into the equation. And obviously, us on the outside, we only get a tiny little sliver of that piece of the pie when it comes to the overall character evaluation. But obviously a huge part when it comes to how the guy ultimately does in the NFL.
Yeah, no, it's completely right. And why do you think Belichick's had so much success?
Yeah, exactly.
The talent's there. Anybody in the NFL, even on the 90, going down to the 53, they all have talent. There's a reason why they're on a roster. It's the character.
Yep.
I'm telling you. And it's not just being a good person off the field, anything like that, or, getting arrested or whatever. It's the overall character, what you bring to the building, what you bring to the locker room, and I've had 7th-round guys go to Pro Bowls. I've had 1st-round guys go to Pro Bowls. And the one thing they had in common, of course, drafted, so they have talent, but it's character. It's the makeup of the person. And it's the fact that they want to get better every day.
Yep.
And they want to challenge people every day, and they want to be challenged every day. And it's few and far between, as you're well aware with the NFL. I mean, you got 90 guys on each roster. That's a lot of bodies. Things are going to happen, injuries and all that, which I understand. But you can identify pretty dang quick who has the factor that's going to what? Young guy, he's a rookie, okay, or fifth year guy. I find Justin Smith in San Fran, and everybody made fun of me because they paid him way too much. He changed the entire culture of that entire building, And Takeo Spikes, similar. I know I'm going back a couple of years, and that team ended up going to Super Bowl because of what he built, what they built, from the standpoint of just pure culture.
Yeah, and I think Eagles fans can reflect back on that Super Bowl run in 2017. That how that locker room was built, the structure from the guys that laid the glue to that from the ground up, guys like Malcolm Jenkins and the Brandon Grahams of the world, Jason Peters. You go on and on that laid the foundation for some of those young guys, and now you hope that can build on for future success. Scott, let me ask you now. We take this to the next step. You're watching a guy for the very first time. You have to watch, 3-4 games just for sake of argument. How do you try and pick those games? What goes into your mind when you're trying to say, okay, to try and get a full sample, what are some of the things that you prioritize when you want to try and first sit down and watch a guy?
Well, the thing about it's first of all, it's competition.
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to watch Tennessee playing Tennessee Chattanooga week 1. What I always did, especially as general manager and director, I would always wait till like week 3 or week 4 because then they start getting into the good competition. You want to see good versus good, and it's important. But sometimes, with the area scouts, you got to pull the trigger early and, watch 2 games from, say, last year, 18, and then you got to watch maybe 2 games from 17, and it makes it tough. It makes it tough because you want to be accurate. But you can't be. It's not exact science. But you can see traits that intrigue you or don't intrigue you, and then all of a sudden, so I'd always make lists after I do, I'd work 2 weeks in a row and then take a day off and do 2 weeks in a row and take a day off. And I always kept a list of guys that were intriguing to me, especially early in the season. And then I'd pay attention to when they got, like the SEC, when they got into the meat of the schedule. And I'd go back and watch them again, watch 3 games, and that's what I think personally that good scouts do, because then you have a real feel for it, and that's just, you talk to coaches, you talk to trainers, you talk to strength coaches, all that stuff. But you don't know exactly who they are. You know, some coaches love them, some coaches don't love them. It's work ethic, it's good or bad or whatever. That's when the good scouts come through, because they will go through the whole process, you know, and write 2 reports on the guy and get him the grade that they think he is, and feel prideful about it because they know they've done the legwork. But then you got to meet them. You got to figure them out. All-star games, you know, combine, and then, you know, in-house visits, you know, in the facility. And that's when everything starts coming together. You know, you have a lot of meetings, you know, when the All-Star games are over prior to combine, you're setting the draft board and all that good stuff. But you really don't know until you know, meaning, who is he? What makes him tick? What makes him be a good player, but what's going to make him be a great player? You know, and it's like I said, it's not exact science, but it's a good process. I've only known one my entire career. You know, I started with Green Bay with Ron Wolf, and then everywhere I've been, it's been the same system. You know, and doesn't mean it's the best system. You know, I've had a lot of success. I've been lucky to be 4 Super Bowls. You know, get a couple rings, and it's so unique, and fans think that it's just you go to games on Saturday, you know, or you watch the NFL on Sunday, you know, and it's not that. It's not that at all. It's many hours on the road, hotel rooms, rental cars, lost luggage. I mean, it's unique how it works out, but it's a great profession. Great profession.
Well, I was glad that you brought up Ron Wolf, because one of my next questions for you was going to be, just who your biggest influencers are and how they impacted you throughout your journey to get where you are today. I know you started in Green Bay, you went to Seattle, San Francisco to start things off. Who were some of your biggest influencers along the way?
Well, the thing about it from the get-go was my father. He spent 46 years with the Raiders. He played 7 and worked 39 years as a scout with Al Davis. So I learned early that, you know, about football. I love football. I mean, it was always a passion of mine. And then, you know, matter of fact, I was in Seattle, and my oldest brother was playing for the Seahawks, and I got a call from my dad, and he says, Ron Wolf wants to hire you. And I said, well, Dad, I'm playing pro baseball. I mean, I can't retire. Now, I wasn't any good anyway. But I was getting ready to have surgery on my shoulder. And he says, I'll just tell you this, because Ron was with the Raiders when my dad played, you know, and then Ron left, of course, went to the Jets and went to Green Bay. But he said, you'll not find a better guy to work for or a better guy to learn from. So I thought about it for a couple of days, and I called Ron. I said, yeah, I'm in. I'll be an area scout. I made $18,500 the first year. I said, I make more money in minor league baseball. He said, okay, year 2, you're getting $60,000. I said, all right, I'm in.
That kind of made it easy for you.
I'm in. Yeah, but Ron was very instrumental. My father, of course, and Ron was very huge. Ted Thompson was huge. Mike Holmgren was huge. You know, I can go through a lot of names that I was very lucky. When I was at Green Bay, I think they ended up having 5 head coaches out of that staff.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and one being Andy Reid.
That's right.
Of course, had a great success, you know, in Philly. And Andy, you know, I always pick their brains. And they're like, well, you're an area scout. Why do you keep asking these questions? I said, I want to learn. You know, Andy was really good with tight ends when I first got there, then O-line, then quarterbacks. You got Mariucci, you got John Gruden. I mean, it goes on and on. Dick Duran, defensive-wise. I mean, it was. So I was very lucky to be around good organizations and good people. And then the thing about it that was really good about it is the fact that it's a big business, which everybody understands. But being around good people makes you excited to work every day. You know, if you're an area scout, out of sight, out of mind. But they're never forgotten, you know, but they're not around the team. They're not like, well, yeah, I'm at the games, you know, I'm at practices, you know, with their NFL team. But they're doing the legwork to make sure it's special. And it was tough at times, but I was young, But it is tough because you're like, no one talks to me, from the organization. The only thing I talk to are college coaches, and trainers and that stuff. But it's unique how it shakes out. But if you do it the right way, you're going to have success in the long run.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this, and I've asked everybody that's come through for this series we've done over the last month or so. Self-scout yourself. What were some of your strengths and weaknesses as an evaluator? Obviously, you've been at it for a long time, so you've been able to hone in on those weaknesses. But what would you say were your biggest strengths earlier in your career versus your weaknesses?
Well, I'll go with weaknesses first. Defensive linemen, especially interior linemen. Because, you want the big plays. You want the splash plays. You want the ESPN type stuff. And, I hit on some, but I missed on some from the standpoint, okay, so they had, 3 tackles in the game. But yet he's double teamed every snap, and the guy next to him's making 8 tackles, versus the run. And I always wanted to see more production. And I learned that through my years big time because I'd always downgrade him because he's only got, 35 tackles in 8 games, instead of thinking, well, how's he affect the game from just him being on the field? And,
yeah, sure.
They're not pretty. They're not pretty. They're not quick. They're not fast. They're not sideline to sideline. They're defensive tackles. They're 315 pounds, but I always wanted more from them. And I learned that quick because I missed on some guys I should have hit on. But then as a strength, I'd say running backs because I got a feel for I played it. I got a feel for the vision, the ability to jump cut, the ability to set the second tackler up before the first one. And I'll go back to Frank Gore again. I mean, I talk to him all the time about it. He would see the second guy's going to tackle him before he made the first guy miss. And it's instincts. It's just natural instincts. And you can't teach that. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the biggest guy. But it's just amazing how they have a feel for the game.
I was going to ask you if you felt like that was something that could be coached up, or if a guy's just got it or he doesn't. And certainly, Frank has proven to be one of the best in the league to do it for a long, long time.
Oh, no doubt about it. He's a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's gonna play this year, and he's gonna set more records for himself. And but it comes down to that it factor. But any position, you need instincts. You have to have instincts. And you got to grow on the instincts and make yourself better anyway, anyhow. I've had guys that like Frank. Frank ran 4.7 coming out. Like he's too slow. He's got 2 reconstructed knees. He's got 2 reconstructed shoulders, and he can't play. He can't make it more than a year or 2. And like I said, I saw him as a freshman. I said, no, he's gonna make it. I promise you. He's got no Joey Spud. He's got nothing else going on. But it's a lot of it's instincts, and you can't teach it. I mean, you can try to increase speed, which is hard. You can do technique work, which is you can improve that, especially with O-line, D-line, hand use, linebackers, hand use. You can improve that. But it comes down to natural ability and instincts. Just knowing the game, knowing how to make plays. And all these guys have made plays their entire career, entire career. But to get the NFL level and be successful, it's a lot of natural ability.
Well, you've talked about some of your past experiences. You've told stories about Frank Gore and Ron Wolf. Some of the stories from early on, some of the players that you added in San Francisco, guys like Justin Smith. As you sit here today with the work that you do, what are some of the things that you kind of can that set yourself apart from others, where you're able to draw back on some of those past experiences? Is there one thing that you can sit here today and say, you know what? I do this a little bit differently than somebody else. Maybe not better or worse, but differently because of the way that, the things that I saw, in Washington, in San Francisco, in Seattle, or Green Bay.
Yeah, there is, like I said, it's not exact science. You learn every year from certain guys. From the standpoint of each position is different. If you got the interior line, you got your tackles in the O-line, you got your interior linebacker, whatever. Every position's different, and when it's all said and done, it's about, there's offensive linemen that I watch a lot of pro tape too, that you watch them and it's just like, they're not very good because they can't move their feet. They can't do this or that. But yet they play 12 years, and have success. So you're like, okay, well, it's a big man's game. There's no doubt about it. And, we had a right tackle in Washington that, I love him to death, and he's been a pretty solid player. Got a big contract, and he's just functional. He's long armed. He's 330 pounds. He's 6'6", and you can survive with those guys. And so you learn that stuff. So when you go through the process, whatever I've been 26 years in the NFL, that you say, okay, well, he's not really pretty, but I see what's playing in the NFL. This guy's going to play in the NFL. If not from day one, he's going to be on the team, and he'll be playing at some point. There's no doubt about it. And it's unique because, especially O-line, it's just a bunch of tough, strong guys that are going to, get after you. Now, if you got Trent Williams or if you got a Peters, whatever, you're very lucky because they're athletic as heck, and they get after it. But the rest of them are just like, okay, he runs a 40? No, he doesn't run a 40. Well, he doesn't need to. How many old linemen run a 40? It's coming off the ball and getting after it. So there's been a lot of things I've learned, and I'm still learning to this day. I do a lot of work with NFL teams, and it's, I'm just, I'm grading for the league, not for an individual team. And it's, and I'm like, well, I don't like this guy, but I know in my back of my mind, I've been around long enough. Well, he's going to go in the third or fourth round, and I'm thinking seventh round, but I can't think that way because, I'm doing it for the league, and it's very unique. It's, when you're around something long enough, which I've been lucky to my entire life, that you get a feel for what's going on, the pulse, what's going on, nowadays with all the spread stuff and seeing what Arizona's going to try to do. And, I was back in the day when I was still younger, but run and shoot. Everybody's like,
sure.
That's the new thing. That's the new thing. Of course it wasn't. But it's a league of trends, but it's also about football players, and it's about not just the talent, it's about the person.
Let me ask you this: when you look at the media and how the coverage of the draft and just the going from college to the NFL has just grown exponentially over even just the last decade, what are some things that you think get talked about a little bit too much in the media, and is there maybe something on the other side of the coin where it's not talked about quite enough?
Well, I think the one thing that's talked about way too much is T-shirt and shorts, workout, combine, pro days. Way too much. Because that's not how you play football. You play football with a helmet on and shoulder pads, pants. I think, all of a sudden guys go to the combine and test really well, which is great. It's nice to know. But you put the tape on, you're like, well, that's not him. He's not running that fast. It's totally different, because it's about reaction. It's not about thinking, and the good ones just react. And then I think the combine's so overrated from the standpoint of working out. I think it's excellent for the medical, first and foremost, hands down, and then the interview process. But all of a sudden, wide receiver goes out there and he's 6'3" and 220 pounds and runs 4.34, and everybody's like, "Oh, we got to get on him. We got to get on him." Nah, watch the tape. There's a reason why he got him in the fourth round. But that's way too built up, and of course the media jumps on it bigger than life. I'm probably sure the receiver I'm talking about.
Sure, yeah.
But Ole Miss.
That's right. Yeah, we talked about it here. Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it all spring. It was, look, he's got the size and the speed, but I mean, I remember sitting at the combine up in Indy in February, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's going top 10." Obviously there are other issues in play there as well, the medical, but certainly did not go as high as people in the media projected at that point.
Well, his teammates had 80 catches. He had 27 or 26.
Sure.
So I think the one that's catching the ball because that's when the quarterback's going to because the quarterback trusts him.
That's right.
But no. I think the combine. Besides the medical and interviews, I think it's way overblown. I think a lot of people make mistakes because of it, and it's like I said, it's a t-shirt and shorts, man. It's not football.
Well, Scott, let me ask you one last question, and really it's more for our listeners. And maybe even if they don't want to be scouts or they don't want to be coaches, they don't want to necessarily get into the game, but maybe they want to learn more and just be smarter fans and be able to talk about the game better. What's the best advice that you would give to them at this point in your career?
Well, the thing about it depends the age they're at and all that. I get a lot of resumes and a lot of stuff. People want to come work, with me or did when I was with an individual team. Just, if you love the game, you love the game, and there's a lot of supply. There's not much demand whatsoever, and these analytics things going out of control a little bit, but it's still, if you love the game, just pay attention to it, keep rolling with it, play fantasy football, draft your team, feel like you're part of something, and see what happens. But it's tough. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, how do I get in? I said, well, I was lucky enough to get in because my father was in the NFL, and Ron Wolf was my father, and that's how I got to Green Bay when I quit playing baseball. And, it was pure luck. It's just right spot, right time, and, and there's a lot of scouts out there that are good. Area scouts, they're trying to build their resume and trying to advance. I would say just if it's that important to you, keep trying. The thing about it is try to find a way to get your foot in the door. And once you do that, then it's on your shoulders. And what you want to do with it and roll with it, then it's going to be up to you. But it's not an easy job at all. When you take pride, like I was an area scout, I'd argue with Ron. I'd argue with other scouts because I felt like I did all the work that I'm right. And it's not always true. But you take pride in what you do. And, if you're a prideful person, then you want to be around football, try to be around it, and see if you have a chance to get into it. But it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But still, if you love the game, you love the game. And that's passion. And it's the same thing with football players. It's the same thing with scouts, with, directors, general managers, whatever. Howie went through a little phase, where he's like kind of weeded out to the other side. Then he came back because you know why? Because he loves the game and he's good at what he does. And I think that's so cool. And I got a lot of really good friends that I've made over the last 26 years. That it's like a fraternity. We all kind of started at the same age. We all kind of went through the growing process. And shoot, I got a picture on my wall right now where the first year we won a Super Bowl with Green Bay, first New England. There's 5 of us in the picture, 6 total, but all have been general managers, and 2 still are with Dorsey and John Schneider. But Reggie, was of course, and then Ted Thompson, of course, and then Ron Wolf and myself. And it's you remember those days because everybody was together. And that's the same thing with the locker room. Everybody's together, you got a chance.
You said something earlier, Scott, that I lied. I want to ask you one follow-up question, just about basically having the conviction in what you're seeing and having the confidence in yourself. How important was that for you? Earlier in your career, as you're trying to advance, having that conviction to be able to say, you know what, this is the guy. I was the one who put the work in on this guy. I know this guy in and out. How important was it to have that conviction when you went into the room and you had those meetings?
Very important. You know, the thing about it, when I first started, I think I was 24, whatever it was. I thought I nailed everybody in my area. I thought I nailed them. And I had passion for it. I'm sitting there and I'm talking to, general manager and director and the president's in there, the owner's in there. I'm like, this is easy. I got this nailed. And Ron Wolf told me, and he respected me a lot after he saw my passion for it. But he said, if you nail 1 out of 4 players in the draft, you're a dang good scout. And what he meant by that was a starter and a possible Pro Bowler. He says, you name one. I'm like, I'll get 3 out of 4, because I was young and cocky and all that. Nah, he said, you hit 1 out of 4, you'll be in this business a long time. And so, I mean, it's unique how it all works because, the young guys, they think they know, and then the ones that end up being good are the ones that realize that they're not being stubborn. I miss this guy. I miss that guy. And you got a guy that's doing the Midwest compared to the guy that's doing the Southeast Conference. He might go a week in the Midwest, 2 weeks without seeing a real good player, but then get to the point where he's like, well, I get this guy a good grade. He's the best one I've seen in 2 weeks. So you get in the draft meetings, prior to the combine, then they realize, holy smokes, that's a good player when you're watching a guy from Georgia, a guy from Florida, a guy from wherever, down in the Southeast. And like, wow, I miss this guy. But you have to be able to admit to yourself, you got to learn from it from the standpoint of why is he so much better than the guy I thought was better? And it's technique, it's athleticism, it's size, it's flexibility, it's all that stuff, speed, whatever. But the good ones learn each year and like, wow, I was way off on that guy, And it doesn't matter where they're drafted as a rookie. It matters where they're at after 3 years.
Yeah.
After 4 years, if they're getting a second contract. The first rounders, of course, have the option for the fifth. But, yeah, you have to – some humble pie at times. It's like, wow, should I give this guy a fourth rounder? He should be a seventh rounder. All these guys are better than my guy,
That's right.
But you can't let it affect you, but you do because you have pride, and you work so hard on it. But then you understand what the league looks like.
Well, Scott, I could ask you another dozen follow-up questions. Really, really awesome stuff. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Really appreciate you joining us here.
Go ahead. I can talk football all day.
Well, I was going to say you mentioned the 1 and 4, and it brings me back to something Jim Nagy had actually said on Twitter earlier this offseason, talking about mock drafts and all these fans just ripping mock drafts apart. Obviously everyone loves mock drafts during the January to April months, but people rip these apart and they say, look, at the end of the day, when we sit here 4 years from now, half of these guys may not be in the league anymore. We could say like, we got this mock draft right, we got that mock draft right, but ultimately, I mean, it's a very, very hard business for a lot of the factors you said earlier on in the segment. It's very, very hard to be able to project these guys, and there's so many other factors, but it's what makes it a lot of fun. It makes it a lot of fun to cover and a lot of fun to do.
Well, the thing about it is, like I said, it's a great profession. And the people in-house that are working for one team only, they're not letting that stuff out. You got the gurus, Kuipers, McShays, Mayock at the time. But they don't know. They don't know the interior of what's going on. Now, like I said, they can see the combine. I'm going to raise this guy to a first rounder because he ran fast. Watch the tape. Why is he in the third round off the tape? That's who you're getting. You're not getting, like I said again, t-shirt and shorts guy. You're getting a football guy. And it's unique because there's so many intangibles that go into it, and you're going to miss. There's no doubt about it on certain guys. There's no doubt about it. And you try not to if you don't want to, but it happens. But if you do enough legwork from the standpoint of the it factor, you have a better chance. Say he's a fifth-round guard, okay? Say he's a backup for 3 years, but on the 53. That's a good pick. That's a good pick.
Sure.
You know, like I said, I've taken seventh-rounders to go to Pro Bowls, you know, offensive linemen. And it wasn't like he's not going to come in here and be a world beater from day one and, you know, all that. But you got a guy with depth that can play either guard or possibly center. And what more do you want? Because you're going to need him. I mean, guys are going to get hurt. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, but that's when it comes down to who's the person. What is he? How's he wired? You know, who's he bringing with him when you draft him? You know, is he bringing is his posse with him, or is he bringing a girlfriend or a mom or a grandma with him? You know, that all plays into it, and it's a small thing. I understand that, but it helps explain the character.
You mentioned earlier that you're evaluating for the league now, and you're doing obviously you're looking through players through the scope of how they'll fit for all 32, not necessarily for one team. Do you find yourself now feeling the need to have to watch more pro tape than you did previously, or is it about the same, or just a little bit different?
Well, the thing about the pro tape is when the teams I work for ask me to watch it. You know, I watch Sundays, but I spend 95% of my time on college, 95%. You know, and there's so many more names. They send me names. You know, I got a certain amount that they send me, and I got to do a full report and get it back to them and all that. So I'm mainly doing college and just trying to place them. And like I said, I've been around long enough where I got a feeling where they're going to go. Agree with it or not, but I'm doing it for the teams, for the league. It's not background. It's not medical. You know, it's not character. It's just as a pure football player. You know, and that's it. I hate it from the standpoint that I can't see him face to face and I can't see him in practice or in a game. But still, it is what it is. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that can sit with me and watch 3 games or 4 games and say who the best player is. You know, that's easy. Well, he had 8 catches for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns. Okay, he was the best player in that game. But and you know that they're going to go where they're going to go. But it's the mid rounds and late rounds. I do a lot of work for agents, and all they want's mid to late round guys because they're not as hard to chase. There's not as much money involved in it, and they're easier to recruit from the standpoint that they're low maintenance. You know, and it's incredible, man. I've probably had 3 agents this summer tell me I don't want a first round, second round. I want 3 through 5. I want low maintenance guys that are easy to sign.
Let me ask you this question, because I've talked about this with a few different people over the course of the last couple of years. When you're watching guys, and this obviously is not the case for the majority of players, but one thing I'll find sometimes is you can almost tell, and again, this is a very broad strokes thing, could you find that sometimes you can tell a guy's character through the film without talking to him?
Yes. I just watched a guy the other day that's supposed to go in the top 10, apparently, which I don't agree with. He doesn't finish plays. Doesn't finish plays.
Yep.
Now, if you do a highlight tape of 25 plays, guy had 10 sacks in his year last year. But you watch the full tape, he doesn't finish. He doesn't chase. He doesn't. Everybody's running towards the ball. He's just standing there watching. You know, it's all or nothing, you know, from the get-go. And so right there, you know there's an issue. Now, he's a young guy, you know, but still, that's a red flag to me. I want guys that are hustling, guys that are playing, guys that are going, you know, and trying to make a play. Now, he just stand there and watch it. And I'm like, okay, I got a serious issue with his competitiveness.
Yep.
Serious issue. Because he's a big kid, too. I mean, he's 6'4", 280 pounds. And, no, we just, you know, and I like I said, I've seen enough where guys like that, you know, not saying he can't be good if he figures it out, because he does have natural talent. But you want to see the passion, man. You want to see playing for the other 10 guys around you. Playing for the 11 on the other side of the ball, your own team, special teams.
Yep.
And I think that's so huge. I take lesser athlete that has toughness and passion than the better athlete that just flashes.
Yeah, and I feel like when you look around, I did this a few years ago. You look around at who are the elite players at each position, and what are some of the things that they share. And these are guys that maybe they went top 15. Some guys went 5th round. You have the Richard Shermans of the world. You have the J.J. Watts of the world. You have the Darrelle Revis of the world. This is again a few years back. But they all had like that you mentioned that it factor, right? That will to be great, that will to be perfect, and that constant strive to reach that plateau. And that's not something that is necessarily recorded at the combine. On the next to the 40-yard dash or the bench press, and it's certainly something that helps lead those guys to be able to reach that kind of ceiling.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And when you get to that point and it, that's why the interview process is so important. That's why knowing the kid, knowing a coach that coached him at the school, that's when you start hitting. I was lucky enough to be in Seattle. We took Sherman in the 5th. We signed Doug Baldwin as a college free agent, but they had it. And it's you have it, you don't lose it.
Yep.
But you got to identify it first, and once you identify it, then you got a chance.
Yeah, we talked about it on the show.
But still, again, it's not exact science. I mean, it's never going to be an exact science because people are people. You got to understand where they come from, how they grew up, who was involved in their lives. A perfect example is Frank. He had his mom; she passed away. His grandma was raising him. He's living in a 2-bedroom house with 9 siblings, and you're just like, wow. I've been lucky enough to have a good life with my family, and a lot of us have been lucky enough to have good lives. But guys that go through that, a bad day on Sundays, nothing. They got so much other stuff going on, and, taking care of, all the family members and every paycheck and trying to take care of them and buy them houses and cars and flying them out and buying them tickets and all that. But that's the whole thing. Like I said, there's a big process that goes into it, and that's part of it. I mean, you'd be amazed from the Southeast region how many people have not had their fathers in their life. Their father figures, the high school coach, or Boys and Girls Club coach, and it's just like, wow, but yet they're men and they're good people, but you just gotta, it's unique. The main question I always ask, who's coming with you? Well, I got 3 members that helped me when I was younger. It's like, I got to take care of them.
Well, Scott, this has just been
a lot of unique stories.
No, I can only imagine. This has been a lot of fun. I really, really do appreciate the time here on the Journey to the Draft podcast. I hope to have you on again soon.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Well, really just outstanding stuff there from Scot McCloughan. You could follow him just like I do on Twitter at McCloughan Scott. And again, if you want to learn more about the game, and this isn't just about, player evaluation or, the X's and O's. If you want to just, even if it's just a simple side and you want to get things started for maybe the young Eagles fan in your life, I would urge you to look up the Kids Club. Share the tradition of Eagles football with the young fan in your life with an Eagles Kids Club membership. For just $20, members receive an amazing welcome kit, invites to special events like the annual Halloween party, opportunities to win Eagles prizes with monthly contests, and so much more. Visit PhiladelphiaEagles.com/Kids Club to sign up today. It's a really, really fun experience there for the young Eagles fan in your life. All right, let's get things going here with the supplemental draft. And again, these are 2 guys. We're going to talk about Marcus Sims, the wide receiver from West Virginia, and Jalen Thompson, the safety from Washington State. 2 guys that are entering this year's draft, so they're going to be picked by an NFL team in the next few weeks. And for those of you who don't know, the process with the supplemental draft, a little bit different than what happens back in April with the regular draft. And really what happens is, leading up to the draft, NFL teams will basically submit their bid for each of these players beforehand. So if they want to draft a guy in, say, the 3rd round, they say that before the draft takes place. And then once the draft starts, literally you just go through whoever put in the highest bid on that player is who gets them. So you've got these two players we're going to talk about. Thompson, again, from Washington State. Marcus Sims from West Virginia. We'll start with Thompson, who, he's a really intriguing player. 3-year starter, 5'11", 186 pounds. He was second team all-conference a couple of years ago as a free safety. And really, one of the big things that stands out to me about him is his versatility. He lined up mostly to the left side there for the Cougars, but playing in that role, that allowed him to be as a single high player, a two high player in the slot, underneath. So he did a lot of different things. And despite the fact that he's a little bit small, he showed a really good knack for playing in traffic and finding the football as a run defender. He is a little bit undersized, so he needs to get a little bit bigger and stronger. That does show up at the point of contact at times. He can get pushed off the route a little bit in man coverage. But that being said, I thought he was a pretty instinctive player. And keep in mind, this is a 3-year starter, a guy who jumped onto the field right away as a true freshman, as a converted high school corner and wide receiver. So jumped in day one, new position, as a starter in the Pac-12. I think there's something to be said for that, and he is an intriguing player, good athlete. He can shadow guys in man coverage, especially in the first and second level of the field. So a guy that's got that short area quickness that you're looking for. Really, the big thing with him is going to be his size and play strength. That's going to be a little bit of a concern. But for a guy that's got his competitiveness and his ability to jump throws and make plays on the football, he did drop a couple interceptions, I thought, last year. But overall, a guy that I thought was pretty instinctive. So a guy that he kind of reminded me of was another West Coast guy from a couple years ago. And I wasn't the biggest fan of DeMonte Casey when he was coming out of San Diego State. But this was an undersized defensive back who was a ball hawk. I mean, if you guys don't remember, a couple years ago, Casey, I believe he was the record holder, I think, for interceptions, at least coming into his senior season, was the leader in the country in interceptions. He was an absolute ball hawk for the Aztecs, but gets drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, they moved him to free safety. He really flashed last year for Atlanta. When Keanu Neal went down, I thought that DeMonte Casey really flashed, and I think Thompson's got some flashes of him. He's got that competitiveness, even though he's a little bit undersized. He's really tough. He shows his ability or the willingness to stick his face in the fan. There were a lot of things I liked about him on film. So this is a developmental guy, I think, that can work in sub-package and do some things for you. His size is a little bit of a concern. Needs to get a little bit more disciplined in coverage, but an interesting player and a guy that I think you can work with. Again, not knowing anything about any of the off-the-field things that we talked about with Scott earlier, but I think that Thompson has some intriguing traits. Then you go to Marcus Sims. I think it's pretty similar. I think when you look at Sims, this is a guy that 2 years ago was second-team all-conference in the Big 12 as a return man. Really did a great job on special teams. He was a special teams player of the year that year for West Virginia. Speed, quickness, ability to get in and out of breaks, really, really impressive. I think he's a really fluid athlete. He's great with the ball in his hands. I think he does a nice job after the catch. You can see that return ability really show up there. Flashes as a route runner. He's got flashes with making plays down the field. So you can see how West Virginia was able to kind of use him as a playmaker and how that could project to the NFL. There are some things he needs to get a little bit better at. I'd like to see him get a little bit better off press coverage. I'd like to see him get a little bit better as a route runner, especially considering the fact that he only really ran routes from one side of the field this past year on the left side. So he's going to have to learn how to run a full route tree from both sides of the field and in the middle of the field. But overall, you could see what this guy could be for an NFL team. You've got the speed, you've got the quickness. I'd like to see him get a little bit more comfortable at the catch point. There were some drops there with some plays that were left on the field. But overall, I think this is a guy, look, get the ball in his hands, he can make some plays for you. So I think when you look at both Thompson and with Sims, you see two guys, obviously different positions, but developmental players that can kind of find a role early as you kind of work them in. Because keep in mind, these guys would be jumping into their new teams at training camp. They're not going to have the benefit of the whole spring that all these other rookies have had. So a lot of these guys usually take a little bit slower to catch on, but it'll be interesting. I think both these guys have a lot of potential moving forward into the next level. Two intriguing players in this year's draft. Among others, there are other guys that are available as well, but those are obviously the two big names. So two really interesting players, and we'll see what happens here. The supplemental draft is on Wednesday, the 10th, so we'll see what happens here in a couple days. All right, we're going to wrap this show up. I've got one fan question. Before we get to that, though, keep an eye. This week, one of my buddies over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, Travis Manger, who's the offensive coordinator for Morgan State, he's going to be joining me. We're going to be diving into the X's and O's. We have a yearly conversation on that show as he comes back to his hometown of Philly. He always stops by. We'll watch some film and jump on the podcast. So Travis will be joining me over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Make sure you go and give that a listen. All right, let's get to our draft mailbag this week. And great question here and kind of timely as well because of something we talked about with Scot McCloughan earlier. Write him comments on our Apple Podcast page. Again, number one way to support the show. Go on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating, leave a question. This is the best way to do it to support the show. Really loved what Write Him asked here. All right, here's the comment. Loved the episode with Jim Nagy. Wonderful information on how the previous scouts and current GMs broke the doors in on being a scout because there was no intern scout role. I have a question for you, Fran. Who are the top 3 ex-Eagles players that were drafted that you were high on and they just didn't pan out? For example, for me, it would be Macho Harris, Brandon Boykin, and Curtis Marsh. So it's a good question, right? I mean, obviously, look, there are lots of guys. There's one that really sticks out to me, and this goes back a while, and it's funny. This is a player. This is right when I jumped into writing and doing things in the media. This was the 2005 draft. The Eagles, with the 35th pick, selected Reggie Brown out of Georgia. And at the time, I was writing for a website, KFFL, and we had things with deals with different websites. So this was a piece that was published for Yahoo Sports. It was the first article I ever wrote about the Eagles. Growing up a lifelong Eagles fan, this was a thrill. And to write about a guy that I was really excited about in the draft and with Reggie Brown was certainly something that got me excited. So you looked at Reggie Brown. He had that big playability. He had a great workout at the combine. You saw the highlight grabs, kind of some of the things we talked about with Scott earlier. I think back to to what I didn't know and what I thought I knew back in those days, and certainly kind of black and white here in terms of what I thought I knew back in those days. But Reggie Brown was a guy that really, really excited me early on as a media member, and I thought, this guy's got game-breaking ability. For whatever reason, just couldn't put it all together here in Philadelphia, and didn't work out, especially to the level that I expected with him coming out of that Georgia program. But when you bring up who was a guy that you were really high on that was drafted by the Eagles that didn't work out, he's probably at the top of the list for me, and I will go back a little bit further than that. Obviously, 2005 is over a decade ago now, which is crazy to say. But if you're good at finding stuff in the deep internet, you might be able to find a Reggie Brown article written in the spring of 2005 from Fran Duffy. It was published for Yahoo Sports, I believe, was the number one place that it was published. So, great question there, Write Him. It was a really, really intriguing thing for me to kind of go back and dig through who were some guys that didn't work out that I expected to. But great show this week. I was really, really awesome information there from Scot McCloughan. It was a lot of fun catching up with him. Obviously, such a wealth of knowledge and really kind of that throwback football guy personality that is so prevalent around the National Football League. That's it, though. This is it for this series with looking around at the different processes that people have in evaluating college players. So now, let's take all that information and now let's put it to task, right? Let's now look forward to the 2020 draft and the 2019 football season. And we're going to start that next week. We're going to start our conference previews. That means Tony Pauline. That means Ben Fennell. That means other guests. Next week, I'm hoping we're going to have a recap from the Manning Passing Academy. I'm going to be going to one of those academies myself this week, so hopefully we'll have a little bit of insight from that as well. So a lot of fun here on the Journey to the Draft podcast. We're just heating up, getting ready for 2019 college football season and the 2020 draft. Stay tuned next time here on the Journey to the Draft podcast.